Today's show, Laura Heywood interviews.
In honor of President's Day, two of the USA's very first presidents are here, Washington and Madison. Welcome to Laura Heywood Interviews. I'm Laura Heywood, and there are two new old presidents in town. How better to celebrate President's Day than to celebrate them? I'm talking about Tamar Greene and Fergie Philippe, who are two of the newest cast members in Hamilton on Broadway. Tamar, with a deep baritone and a linebacker physique, is playing the larger-than-life George Washington, and Fergie is James Madison, our country's third president, as well as the hilarious and very youthful, say it with me, Hercules Mulligan! Rather than dwell on the current administration, yikes, I want to celebrate President's Day in true Broadway girl style with the presidents of Hamilton on Broadway. Tamar Greene and Fergie Philippe, welcome to Laura Heywood Interviews.
What's good?
Hello.
Oh my gosh, yay! How many people are sitting down with the first and third presidents of the United States on President's Day?
I think it's a rarity, actually.
Yeah.
You won that.
Well, I don't want to jump ahead of ourselves. We don't know. We don't know what's happening.
Fair. It's a big world.
Science is big. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There are also several Washingtons and Madisons out there.
Yeah, this is true. This is true.
Find me someone who's sitting down with John Adams, and then I'll be surprised.
We'll go to Jersey and find him.
Everything is legal in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So you guys are both performing in Hamilton on Broadway. I got to go back to the show to see you perform. And my favorite thing, now that I've seen the show, we'll say a handful of times. If we get into specifics,
Only
people get
a
mad.
handful.
We'll just say a
One
Tamar
handful?
Greene size handful.
There you go. All right.
And I get to see what intricacies the actors bring to the performances. And I'm always curious as to how much freedom you have to work within the choreography of the show to find yourself in the characters you're playing. Before we get into that, why don't you tell me each a little bit about your experience with the show? Tamar, you've been with it a little longer than Fergie has.
I don't know. Did we? Have I?
No, I actually think it's vice versa. Or no, I think we started around the same time.
Right. You've been with the Broadway company longer. No?
No.
Literally
Oh my
started
gosh.
the same day.
No, we both started the same day.
I really pride myself on doing good research, and we're not off to a good start. What I will
all
say,
good. It's
though, is
confusing.
that this is one of the joys of doing live radio, is showing that we are not perfect. And a lot of people who do podcasts, they edit everything, and you would never know that I said that because I'd be like, retake. But
Yeah.
I wanted to do live radio specifically so that anybody who's listening who's like, oh, her life's so cool, hanging out with Broadway people. I'm like, I'm a mess too. and I would like to
Yes.
quote myself from a recent interview with Broadway's Eden Espinosa, where I was like, the world needs more shit shows. More
Yeah.
people need to see that even the people who are like at the top of their game are still a mess and
Yes.
still make
Oh my
mistakes
gosh,
and
yeah.
still have to put their
Absolutely.
feet in their mouths.
I
so.
actually really love that. I do that on Instagram. Sometimes I show myself like warming up, sometimes, and I'm like, okay, so I just warmed up and I cracked, right?
Yeah.
How do I fix this crack though? How do we,
Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
'Cause,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's the realness. You want to show like what it actually entails to do this job that some people are like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. You do it. You're so perfect. I'm like, no, I'm not. It takes work.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, the imperfection is what makes it. I mean, that's what
Absolutely.
makes it like the great art that it could be or is. You know what I mean? I
Right.
think that's why Burr's Corners became such a big thing on Instagram because it was just this idea of like, well, what's the point of showing only the good stuff? Like,
Right.
I mean, the bad stuff is just as good as we've all seen multiple times.
whole
you
lot
know?
of show.
Yeah.
Well, Rory O'Malley, the longtime King George, started a podcast because of this.
Yeah.
Because he was posting things on Instagram that were like a picture with Beyonce and,
Living the Dream.
Exactly.
That's one of my favorite podcasts.
Yeah,
I love
Living
that
the Dream
podcast.
with Rory O'Malley. And he talked to people specifically about all the shit, like all the difficult stuff. And in fact, talked to a lot of the cast members from Hamilton and has, I think, 100+ episodes out there.
Yeah.
So I'm all about that. And I actually love that you brought up that you will share that stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
we work so
absolutely.
hard, and I say we as if I'm on Broadway, but like you guys work so hard to make it look effortless that sometimes people think it actually didn't take any effort.
Right.
And the only
Yeah.
way that kids will grow up thinking, oh, if I work hard enough, I can do it too, is to see the actual work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with work comes failure. Because I think also like the idea of work sometimes gets misconstrued for or like the idea of showing the work gets misconstrued for showing the finished product instead of showing the work in progress. And it's okay to present a work in progress, which is like the whole point of theater also, like the idea that theater is supposed to grow and your shows are supposed to grow, which is why you have interchanging cast, and sometimes shows go through things where they get new choreography or they get new songs and like, you know, things like that. And this idea that we have to present a finished product with, you know, air quotes is kind of ridiculous, because it's the whole point of theater. It's not film. You know what I mean?
Right.
Absolutely.
My favorite, it's not just a quote, it's like my life's motto is that being new at something and being bad at something are not the same thing, even if they look the same. And if I didn't realize this, I didn't grasp it or apply it to my own life until my mid-30s. I was a kid who got a lot of gold stars for things that really did come easy. And so I just stopped doing anything that didn't come easy because there were enough comfort zones. I did not want to risk looking like I was bad at something when there were plenty of things that I was just good at without trying. And that led to a whole lot of imposter syndrome. And only in my 30s was I like, you know what? I'm gonna really work for, like, what would happen if I took my natural talents and added work, you know, and concentrate on progress instead of final product.
Right.
And you're right, that is what theater's all about. And I wonder if that was what drew me so much to theater in the first place.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that work is really important. Even when you get to a certain level, you know, you think of like getting like, some people get complacent, you know, and like you get so good, like, so there's certain things that I do naturally that I think are pretty good or whatever, and I'm like, okay, cool, I got it. And then I'm like, wait a minute. No, I've just been coasting for a while, and like I could be better. I'm like on autopilot, and I'm not engaged right now.
Like what's an example?
Oh my gosh. Okay. It's trying to be general here, but okay.
The general.
The general. Fair enough. Yeah, I think there's certain times where I get, let's say with I'm a pianist first. So for years I played piano, classical piano, all that stuff. And then for a while I stopped practicing new things. I stopped doing new things. And like every time I would go to play, I would play the same songs. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a pianist, I'm good. And I'm playing the same Beethoven thing, the same Mozart, whatever. The same thing.
Yeah.
But like I never challenged myself to try a new thing. But not only that, I also never started to even see that I was actually deteriorating in the things that I was doing all the time. I just started allowing myself to like, I forgot that part. I'll just skip it and just like keep going. And it's like now I have a blind eye to my own self of the cycle that I got into. You know what I mean? And it happens to me on stage sometimes too. And I'm like doing, you know, I joined in 2018, the show in Chicago. And after doing maybe like 200 shows, 300 shows, you start just like muscle memory doing stuff, you know? And like I easily can slip sometimes, and like if I'm not like in that scene, or actually it doesn't matter. Sometimes I could be in the scene, but you're on this autopilot and you're like, okay, cool, I know what I'm doing. And then like you're thinking about like a sandwich you left in the room. Like,
literally,
I'm gonna finish that sandwich. I'm gonna go finish that sandwich. And then like, it's like, oh, what happened in those past 3 minutes? I have no idea.
Did I save my life?
Did I save my life? I assume I did.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
It's funny. I think that especially like after like the 300 performances, it becomes like driving. And I only know this because when I first started learning to drive, I remember there was one point where I was with my dad in the car and I started going and he gave me a compliment on my driving. And I was like, oh, I was zoned out. Like I hadn't realized that I wasn't like as focused as I was before. And it freaked me out because I was like,
absolutely.
I actually really don't like that. I want to make sure that I'm as focused as possible. And so, yeah, after those first few hundred shows, and it's so funny to say like few hundred shows because like before this show, I mean, the longest run I had was maybe 25 shows. And so the experience of doing more than 100 is wild, and when you get to like the 300, 400 range, for me at least, it was it's like you said, I don't know if it was necessarily a matter of, because I would be in the scene, but it wasn't fully me. Like it's a percentage fight, because then it becomes like 60-40, and this unfortunately the 60 is me going, oh God, I don't want to get out of the parking lot today because like the way traffic works in Dallas is really annoying. And so I got to figure out how to get out. Well, maybe I'll stay in the dressing room afterward. And the other 40% is like really acting with Kyle, who was playing my lap jet. You know what I mean? And so And I think that's what's exciting about being in this new company is that, like, you know, the past 3 weeks have been, I think, more exhausting than they've ever been, even though we're playing to a smaller house, thus our energy has to be smaller. But it's been the most exhausting it's ever been because I'm refocusing back into the show because I've been away from it for so long.
Yeah, it's like when you go back to the gym after being gone, you're like, I'm still strong. I can still, you know, my muscles are still hot, you know, but then you go back to the gym and you're like, why am I so
You do that one pull up and you're like, that hurt.
Look, you can do one pull up, you're doing better than me.
I did one the other day, and I was really excited. I've never been able to do one before.
Congratulations!
Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you've both been in the show about a year.
When did you join?
I joined. We started rehearsals for Philippe Company December of 2017.
Okay. And that's one of the tours.
Yeah, that was the second national tour that opened in Seattle. We started performances beginning of February 2018. Gotcha. So technically, but I left in August, so a year and a half. I'm like continuing the year and a half.
That was with Shoba Narayan as your first Eliza,
right?
I love Shoba.
Mm-hmm. Shoba's the best. Now she's in Wicked.
I know.
Killing that Nessa Rose.
Yep.
I love her. She's great.
She and I met because she went, like, the day before she left for Seattle. She was like cleaning out a bunch of stuff, and she posted on Twitter that she had a pair of boots from her run in Great Comet that she didn't want to throw away, and they were these beautiful, like, somewhere between Doc Martens and Gladiator sandals. They were like up to the knee, but with single straps around, but a Doc Martens base. And she was like, "Who wears a 7.5?" And I was like, "Hey!" I was one of like 100 people to respond, and she was like, "Of course, I'm going to give them to BroadwayGirl." So I took her to lunch, and she gave me these incredible boots, and I wear them everywhere.
Oh, that's awesome!
I get complimented on them whenever I wear them, and I'm always like, "They were worn on stage in Great Comet." She was allowed to take them. They were actually they were actually cut after a couple performances, and they were like not going to be used again. And they've been purchased for her. So most actors don't get to just walk out with their costumes, which always makes me so sad.
It is sad. Well, this sweater, funny enough, is actually from when I just did Ragtime in the winter in North Carolina.
That was a costume?
Yes, because we said it in 2019. We did like a whole like revamp of it, and kind of we really looked at the script from a very current standpoint and tried to make a lot of connections, specifically about intersectionality between the races and between gender and sex. And so we really played with a lot of stuff, especially like Cole House's like look of what it would be in 2019, especially a man and literally. And I was Cole House, and so it was like, if he lived in Harlem in 2019, what would he wear? And I was like, I got an idea.
I'll just bring my own
I was
wardrobe.
like, you got it. And they pulled out this sweater, and that was like the first contract where they were like, hey, I don't know how much of this you want, but like you can have any of the costumes you want. And I was like, great, I'll take all of it. Thank you.
Wow. That's amazing.
The things that break my heart the most are like when people have shoes made for them. Because like, and actually I know several people who have put it in their contract. Like Laura Osnes put it in her contract that she got her glass slippers from Cinderella.
Oh, bet. I would too.
And Todd Ricall put in his contract that he got his Lola boots.
Oh, yes.
And I'm like, and I think Leslie Margarita has her shoes from Matilda and from Dames at Sea, because like they're the most beautiful thing in the world, to quote Kinky Boots.
Yeah, and then they're custom made for you.
For your feet.
Right.
Nobody else can wear them.
Right.
Somebody else can maybe even wear something like, your costumes for Hamilton, which I know are made specifically for you. But theoretically, somebody could come along who would fit it.
And they can touch it up
fairly
too.
Oh, yeah. And like jacket, put it in. And they make it in a certain way exactly so that they could like, edit it. Yeah, for the next person. Oh,
I didn't know that. So they can take the seams out and,
depending on the costume piece, yeah. I mean, even me, like I lost like a significant amount of weight from the time I left tour to here. And they were like, well, we'll get new costumes for you. But like in the meantime, we can take a bunch of this stuff in. And like it looks great.
And
it
for
fits
you,
it
better. I mean, your pants got to look
Listen,
hot.
the pants got to be hot, okay?
Hercules
and they
Mulligan.
are hot.
It's so funny when I think of Hercules Mulligan, because like I know Oak really well, and and Hercules Mulligan is like this badass, like he's he's like this big old dude, and
Yeah.
and thinking about him with a needle and thread just cracks me up every time.
I imagine he has like these kind of glasses like at the tip of his nose, and he's just like curled up in like a tiny room, just like really silently to himself in his like giant leather coat and beanie, just like.
Well, I mean,
very
it's
patient with
actually. Oof, I hope this doesn't come out wrong. It's sort of like picturing you playing Beethoven.
Oh,
it's like this big old dude playing this delicate.
I get that all the time. Like, yeah, what did you play? What football, position?
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, I never.
Oh my God,
I never played football actually.
Kyle and I used to like play that game on tour. It would be like, all right, how many people asked you about if you played sports today?
Yeah,
we would
right,
tally up our numbers. But I think that's kind of and James and I were actually talking about this last night.
This is James Monroe Agahart.
Yeah, and
the third president of Hamilton. Oh,
yes,
but the fourth president. Wait, no, the third.
Jefferson.
Jefferson was third, yeah, and I just referred to Madison
was
as
fourth.
third.
Yeah, that.
Can we edit this?
Nope. Shit show.
Oh my gosh.
gotta listen to Sparta.
Hashtag Laura Heywood interviews. Hashtag
shit show. That's when you get like really. That's when you really start taking off. That's when the traction really starts growing. They're like,
when you made it.
Thing called shit show. I'm really into it. It reminds me of myself.
Maybe that's what I should change. I mean, like nobody finds Laura Heywood interviews. Nobody stumbles upon it because nobody just accidentally searched
I think
Laura
Laura
Heywood.
Heywood's shit show would be amazing.
I mean, I might not be able to get like Disney on Broadway to come on the show.
No, they'd be like, excuse me.
Maybe that'll be like a separate web series that I do. Or
Yeah.
something. I mean, I'm not mad at it. I do think it's kind of amazing.
Yeah. Oh my God. I think it'd be great.
And actually, my first guest can be Anne Harada, who's currently playing a pile of poo off Broadway.
Oh, that's right. In Emoji Land.
Literal shit show.
Amazing.
Anyway, all right, we digress.
But what I was saying was that Breaker, James and I were talking about, because we were talking about Passing Strange, which is like a brilliant show if you don't know what it is.
I saw it several times on Broadway.
I'm jealous
you were
of
a
you.
wee child.
Well, we don't got to do all that.
No, look, Fergie reached out to me on Twitter and was like, I grew up reading your tweets.
Oh.
Facts.
And I was like, we're the same age, aren't we?
She was like, don't ever speak to me again.
Twitter didn't even exist till I was like 27.
I don't even have Twitter now.
Oh my God. But we were talking about how with Passing Strange, like that's a show specifically if you were the outlier in the black community, where if you were a black kid that felt like you didn't fit in the stereotypical or in the cultural essence of what a black person should be. And I ended up laughing, and I was like, I feel like every black person who felt that also ended up being in Hamilton, which is like hysterical because it's this like big hip hop show, you know what I mean? But it is interesting that we end up finding these things within ourselves that we were like, oh, we're so different, and you know, obviously we're not. Everyone's really similar in a lot of ways, which is why I think, you know, we all ended up being attracted to this show, because it was a lot of what we saw ourselves in something that maybe perhaps before we wouldn't be able to see ourselves. And then we're able to bring things like, you know, your classical music training and you know, James's freestyle, and like Breakers also has like a big classical music background. And so like we're able to bring all of that into the show, and it's what's able, you know, circling back, it's what's able to make the show fresh for us, even though we've done it like, I think you've probably done it around 400 to 500 times at this point too.
Probably.
Yeah, and like that's around the number of shows I've done, but that's why it's still fresh for me, because I can bring those experiences and bring those different things from our lives into the show and see how they can influence each performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are, you know, I grew up in a city, you know, the city. I'm from Rochester, New York, and I grew up in the city, so I have access. I'm a first-generation American, but I've had a lot of reggae influences growing up, but also a lot of hip-hop, you know, music.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm very connected to that world as well. But, like, I'm definitely a lot more than that, you know?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So, like, I got my master's. In fact, my master's in opera, my classical music, and I got 2 bachelors in computer information systems and in piano and vocal performance.
Exactly.
You know, so I do a lot of different things. And in fact, my last thing I did for Alex Lacomar for my final audition was he asked me to come back in the room and sing an aria for him.
Wow.
Literally.
That was just for his enjoyment, though. That had nothing to do with your audition.
It literally did. He was like, you know, you had a great audition. I'm just curious because we had talked about some things before that. Like, what do you like opera-wise? I was like, Puccini, Verdi. Like, we're just talking about music because we love, you know, like he loves music, I love music. And we're just chatting, and I left the room, and he brought me back in. It's like, man, great audition, truly, truly amazing. And this has nothing to do with anything. We're just curious. Just pretend we're out at lunch or something. And I was like, do you ask people to sing arias at lunch? I was like,
amazing.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, sure.
Oh, that's awesome.
Singing Italian.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
So we're all just complex.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love that energy we all bring and the differences in.
What I think is so cool is that you've each done about the same number of performances. I now know, but you've only done a couple of months worth of performances together. And one of the things that the Hamilton Company almost seems like, even though there's the various tours, there was the Chicago company, there was the San Francisco company, and like. Everybody seems to be going back and forth. It almost seems like there's just one big company. That I know there are actually people who are hired to be what's called a universal swing, which means that they hang out and are flown into whatever city they're needed. But I sort of feel like everybody is a universal version of their role because people from Broadway are going out on tour, people from tour or the sit-down companies are coming to Broadway. People are mixing up what roles they're playing. Like the guy who's playing Philip Hamilton and John Lawrence. Didn't he play Lafayette Jefferson at one point?
Who? Which one? Daniel Yearwood?
Yeah.
No.
Did he? Oh, Jesus.
But Nick Chris, who was just doing Washington, also did Burr out on the tour. And then before that was a standby. And so that's totally... I think that's one of the really cool things about Ham right now is that more than a sense of loyalty, which Ham definitely has a sense of loyalty to, its artists / employees, but I think it's also there's also a lot of room for creative discussion and creative growth if you're looking for that. In the first couple of months, I remember Patrick Bassel, our associate director, he very much was like, what do you see yourself doing with this company? What are your goals with this company? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I just got here, but I'd love to keep the conversation going. I was so thrown off by that question.
You're especially health insurance?
Yeah, I was I just want money. Can you just, you know what I mean? At the time, I was just so, and I think that's one of the good things about a lot of training facilities in the U.S., especially when you're going to a BFA musical theater program or just an arts program, period. They're taught you're taught to view the job as this very sacred thing. We kind of put it on a hierarchy, especially when it's something as big as Hamilton. But what is never considered is your artistic growth that's attached to that. And so when I was asked that question, it was kind of mind-blowing because I was just in the mindset of, I'm happy to be here. I'm very grateful. Please don't fire me, And then, very quickly, specifically for me, Tommy and Patrick were very great about really being like, hey, you're chill. You don't have to worry about that. We just want to know, what are you trying to do in your life and how can we help if we can help in any way? And I think that's something really... different. I just haven't experienced that with any other place.
Can you imagine the world if every boss mentor started somebody's new job like that?
Yeah.
That's how we grow. I believe that, when you hire somebody, you should prepare them to be your boss someday.
Yeah.
To give them the skills they need so someday they're going to be hiring you.
Yeah.
And I've seen so many in all industries. I've seen so many people who work to keep the people below them down. Because they are threatened or because they are controlling or whatever. And that makes my heart really happy that you had that opportunity. Hopefully someday you guys will be hiring Alex Lacamoire for something.
Sure will if he takes it, if he's not too busy.
Right? So what do you bring to this? What do you bring to this role that do you have specific things where you're like, here's a moment I'm going to make my own? This is actually for both of you. Are there moments where you're like, I'm going to do this specific thing that hasn't been done before? There's a moment in the wedding scene where you drop the rose petals, right? And you're the first Hercules Mulligan I've seen who just drops them almost like dropping a mic instead of throwing them. And that's such a tiny thing because they're both, it doesn't change the intention of the moment where it's here's this big dude with some little dainty
flowers.
Rose petals, right? Same thing as, it makes people laugh for the same reason I laugh when I picture Hercules Mulligan with the needle and thread.
Exactly.
It's delicate versus tough.
The opposition.
Exactly. But so is that just how you did it or and then it just stuck? Or were you like, I want to do something different. How can I make this mine?
I think what's really cool also about having this current concoction of Broadway members is that so many of us now have been from other companies, and most of us were, well, not most of us, but some of us were in companies that like originated that said company, and when you do that, there's a lot of encouragement to bring your own flair and be different and do something else, because they're so like, we're not trying to be the original cast. You guys are not Oak, you're not David, you're not Renee. Like, there's no point in trying to have you like make a regurgitation of that. So instead, what do you have to offer? And I think, again, like, you know, not that it's a bad thing, but I think all of us were shocked because we were kind of like, we're trained to be able to come into a role and make it as easy as possible, and make it as smooth as possible for everyone else around us. But when you come into a space that's like, no, just do whatever you want, it was shocking for me. But I think that, you know, something like that, I've played with that moment in so many different ways. Like there was a time where I used to skip down the aisle and do that and like, wee, and like throw it. But then like, you know, towards the end of the run on tour, I was realizing that I was having more fun with subtlety when it came to Mulligan, and finding bigger moments with Madison. When I first started doing the tour, I kind of like obviously was switching on the other two because Mulligan is a bigger personality and Madison's a more subtle personality. Yeah. But I started playing with the oppositions in what they initially come off as, and that's kind of where I found the like dropping of the flowers moment, and I found that to be really funny. And so just little things like that, or my movement pattern for Madison, I think, is a lot more, I don't want to say dancey, I think that's a wrong word, but like it's a lot more movement based than I think people would imagine Madison to be. And the only reason that I found that is because I play his intentions a little bit more evil than,
which I wrote.
Yeah, you know, just a lot more like he's like an angrier dude instead of just sick. Like, you know, and it comes to little things like that where it's like, I look at things initially, and after a while, when things start to feel complacent, or when things start to feel, when I'm like, yeah, I'm comfortable now, then I start to just go, oh, what else can I do? Like, what else is there to play with? Yeah, that's kind of been my journey with it. I don't know what it's been for you specifically.
Yeah, you talked about I didn't originate in Chicago, but I had the same experience. Yeah, you know, I was the replacement. You know, I was Jonathan Kirkland, and but still, I walked in and it was like, okay, cool. What do you do?
Right.
You know, what do you do? What do you do? You know what I mean? They weren't just like, okay, so here is the archive of Broadway, and Chris Jackson moved here, and he decided to point at this particular moment. You know, whatever. Like it was, or even like, you know, Kirk. You know, we call Jonathan Kirkland. Kirk did this or whatever. So it was nothing like that. It was like, okay, cool. Basically do stuff and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
But how I mean, we call it a play, or in this case a musical, but like how rare and wonderful that you actually get to play.
Yeah,
absolutely, because it's so many times it's like when they find their thing, especially such a huge show like this, you would expect that like this formula works, we're doing this,
well, especially when it's like the best received musical of all time.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like, don't change a thing.
Don't change a thing. This is it. This is what the world needs to see.
So how much did you study about these actual historical characters, and how much of what you bring was from the script? Did you go back and read Cherno's Washington biography? Did you study up on Madison?
Yeah, I did read a lot. I didn't read the whole thing, but I did read a lot of it, and we talked about it with my the associate director, Jess, in Chicago. We talked a lot, and she would read things, and then we would like have like pseudo book club kind of things where she would like take little notes, and she's like, "Did you read this thing on page 102?" And I'm like, "Oh, let me check it out," and like read a little bit more about his life. And so I did read that. I researched a lot. I looked at whatever online articles, things in like TV shows. There's a TV show called Turn, Washington Spy.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love that show.
Actually,
I need to really get into
I'm
that.
friends with Kelly Aucoin, who plays Hercules Mulligan.
Oh, word!
Yeah, he's on Billions. He plays Dollar Bill on Billions. I don't know if you watch that show, but I was like, I'm friends with two very different actors
That's
who
so
both play Hercules
funny.
Mulligan. In fact, I should bring him. I should bring
I
him
love
to the
that.
show and
have a Hercules Mulligan off.
Yeah, I think you're very. I don't know that he could rap, but you know what? Who knows?
It could be in different ways. It could be in. We'll do a sewing contest.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could do like a Hercules Mulligan Olympics.
Oh my god.
Did you study these guys? Did you?
Yeah. It's so funny too because I was walking over and I was like, "Oh, it's President's Day, so we're definitely going to talk about Madison a lot." And then I was like, "Oh, I 100% forgot all of the research that I put into this because it was so long ago." But I found out that I booked the gig like a solid 4 months before I started rehearsal, and so while I was in New York, I was like, "Well, I'll go check out like." The Hamilton Grange for sure, just to see what it is. And I realized that I only lived 3 blocks from it at the time, not even knowing. And I was just like, oh, cool. And I walked in and there was this tiny little book that was like all the places Hamilton has like existed through or something like that. And it's just a giant list of all the places where Hamilton did certain things in the show that you can actually physically go there. So like I went to the Francis Tavern where my shot takes place. I went to this in that tavern, there's like a spy exhibit all the way in the back in this like tiny corner, and there's one square dedicated to Hercules Mulligan like in the back. And I was like, whee!
A man on the inside.
Yeah, and then I went to Trinity Church to go see the grave sites, and I went down to Phi Dai and saw a couple of other things. But yeah, I did a lot of like physical in-person research, like just to see.
Like feel the vibe.
Feel the vibe. I went to like the Museum of Money, which is in Phi Dai, which was like insane.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's insane. And like how deep they go into Hamilton's like a creation of the treasury is really like it's insane how much detail goes into.
I want to give a little plug to this Museum of Money.
Yeah, please do.
Because it was certainly Hamilton that got me there, and I was like, oh, this is gonna, like.
Yeah,
look at the $10 bill.
Same.
The best thing about this museum is it is not very big.
No,
you
it's
can see
really
it all
tiny.
in like an hour, maybe. And there's a room dedicated to Hamilton and his legacy because I think they know that's what people are coming.
Oh, yeah,
that's why people are
100%.
coming. Like Hamilton's the best thing that happened to that museum probably ever.
Same thing with the Grange. Like they were all like, oh,
no, apparently the Grange
has always been.
No, they've been getting too much foot traffic.
Oh,
like, the
no
building
way.
was like the building was not. I'm not speaking for them, but
No,
I have
no, no,
heard
no.
that like they've had to set up renovations sooner than they expected
Oh,
because
wow.
so many people
So
want
many
to
people
see
are
it
coming.
now, and the building was not meant to have thousands and
Thousands of people.
thousands of
Yeah.
visitors.
Yeah. Wow.
So I don't think they're mad at it.
No,
I think they
but-
have the resources
but they are like,
to
whoa.
upkeep it. But yeah, they're like, yeah.
Funny.
It was just supposed to be like Eliza and the kids.
Yeah, exactly. That was all it was meant for. But that's about the amount of research. And that was mostly for Mulligan stuff, because I thought there was less stuff on Mulligan than there was on Madison. I was very wrong. But with Madison, I actually mostly looked up why he and Hamilton fell out and his relationship to Jefferson, because there are a lot of articles and a lot of pieces about Jefferson and Madison's relationship, because they literally were described as the perfect friendship because they were such polar opposites, and like how Madison crafted so much from underneath and from behind closed doors and wasn't really the face. He not used Jefferson, but Jefferson became the mouthpiece for the both of them to get a lot of things done, because Jefferson had so many people on his side, because he was kind of so brash and his writing was so brilliant. And so the way their relationship is talked about is really fascinating.
Cool. Did you know he was only 5'4"?
That's the number one thing people tell me at the stage door. They're like, "You're not short and have tuberculosis," and I'm like, "Nope,
That's
I
the
don't."
point. Guess what?
That's the whole thing. But yeah, let me sign your
not
playbill.
a white dude. So as I mentioned, I've seen Hamilton a handful of times. One of those times was the preview performance where President Obama was in the audience.
Oh man!
And because of the way that the audience, the seats in the Richard Rodgers are raked in a way that's unusual, where the first section of the orchestra is pretty much flat, and then behind it there's this sort of slanted version. So the president was sitting. My president. Was sitting in one of the final rows of the flat area.
Okay.
Right on the side where he could exit quickly.
Easily. Yeah.
He came in after the lights went down and left before the lights came
back up.
Still, like, those first notes had to be held for quite a while. But there was this. I cried the entire time for so many reasons.
Yeah.
But the biggest one was that I was watching the first Black president watching the Black first president.
Yeah.
And I have goosebumps just talking about it.
Yeah.
I saved the Kleenex that I cried all my mascara into, like pressed between the pages of a book as a memento of that day, because it was so moving.
That's so profound.
And to be back at Hamilton at the beginning of Black History Month to watch, I don't know for sure, but I think it's the first time that the immediate Hamilton family on stage has all been cast. The principal actors are Black actors.
All three of them,
Hamilton, Eliza, and Philip. And to see all of these voices rising up, especially in, with all the other shit going on in another definition of shit show. The world needs less of that kind of shit show. But like, it made me just feel like, at least in this microcosm, at least in some ways, the world is making progress.
Yeah.
And the number of people who see Hamilton every day around the world now, just getting the right message in front of all those eyeballs makes me feel so hopeful.
I mean, it's obviously like one of the most rewarding. I mean, is there a bigger word than rewarding experiences of the show? Like, to be able to have that and to be able to give that to people. And I think, specifically with our company right now, with JJ doing these next few weeks as Hamilton, like, even the Sons of Liberty are all these like young, fiery Black men who are all like getting together to like start this revolution. And it really like, and the four of us right now have this connection that, like, I feel like every single night the four of us understand, like, what a weight that impact makes. And so when we all look into each other's eyes, like, I can tell that we're all thinking about the same thing. And it gives me chills thinking about, like, in a way that, like, my shot never has before, which is kind of ridiculous because my shot should always give me chills. Yeah. But, like, it's profound. Like, there's really no other way that I can describe it. Like, and yeah, especially at this moment in time. And, like, it's giving exactly what I think people need and what people want, you know what I mean? And it's a kind of catharsis for a lot of people.
Sidebar, it was definitely JJ I was thinking of who was Jefferson.
Yes. Well, JJ has
because I knew that I got him confused, but I wasn't just grasping at straws.
No, but JJ
I have some friends
swings
who saw him.
So many of them, and like he I mean, I've seen JJ now do 3 different roles between Lafayette, Burr, and Hamilton, and like he's incredible. He's incredible.
I mean, this young man is like one of the greatest actors
I've ever seen. Yeah, I could go on for days
he's
about JJ.
He's really incredible.
He's actually he was my rehearsal Hamilton when I first started in Chicago. I think Chicago was his first company. I believe, right? Yeah, he started there first, and like I was like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah,
like,
he's so
step
giving.
Up. Yeah,
so giving as an actor. He's great. I could talk about him for literally days.
He was the first Hamilton, I think I saw the preview as well, actually. I saw the preview on Broadway, and Joe Biden actually was there.
Shut up!
Word. You're talking about Obama. But Joe Biden was behind me, and I won the lottery to see Hamilton. So I was like, really?
Oh, because you were in the couple.
Yeah.
Wait, this was before you.
This is this is 2015, June or July.
Was it in-person lottery or
it was
online?
In-person lottery. Yeah, it was.
You came to Ham for Ham?
Yeah.
Do you remember who performed at your Ham for Ham? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but like, those performances are iconic now.
Yeah.
God, I mean, it was the original. Everybody was the original folks. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was everybody. Yeah,
and you came and you put your name in the bucket.
And I did all of it. Yeah,
I was at almost all of those.
Are you serious?
I never won. I mean, I've won in plenty of other ways.
Yeah.
But I never won that lottery. But those. I put a bunch of videos of the Ham for Ham performances on my YouTube channel because I was there so often that they just let me like sit in the front of the crowd and film it, which was pretty awesome.
Those were crazy. I mean, if you got to be on 46 in those those days, like if it was so long ago, but like it kind of feels that way. It's about 5 years ago now. Yeah. But like if you were ever on 46, no matter what end of it you were, like the number of people that were crowding the street just to, I got to see the we're going to brag about when we saw it, who we saw it with. I saw the preview before it opened. Retta, who played Donna on Parks and Rec, was at my performance. But no, I remember being there and being like, oh, I was like, I hadn't realized that the ticket I bought was for the night before it opened on Broadway. And I just remember being on 46 and being like, I really was not prepared for what this show was doing to people, because there were just, I was at the end of 8th, literally like, I can barely see the marquee. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and
it's
insane.
It was
starting to blow up there. It wasn't even like the hugest.
It had the cast album hadn't even come out, but it was still like.
It wasn't until the cast album came out. I think
that's when it
because
really
I used to stand out front of the even during those Ham for Ham days, I'd sometimes walk down 46th Street and just stop and talk to Lynn outside the stage door. He was walking in, and we'd just stand there and talk, And then now I think he has to go everywhere under like a cloak of night,
If he shows up in the building, I have to take a double take because I'm like, is that? Oh yeah, he's like a little incognito right now.
I hadn't even seen the other day he was there, right? And
he snuck in. We have like Con on Tuesdays, which is like our little meeting before the show at the start of the week,
what is
and
it
like
called?
Con, like the Constitutional Convention.
Oh my gosh! That's awesome.
But yeah,
I
was gonna say
it's crazy.
But like at the end of it, like when everyone was leaving, like out of the shadows, Lynn was there, like talking to her stage manager, and I was like, "Where in God's name did you come from?"
Yeah, I walked out of my dressing room, I think, as him and because Tommy and Alex were there as well.
Oh yeah,
I heard Tommy's voice. I was like, "Is that Tommy?" I turned and saw hair, and that's all. That was it.
You're
all
like,
I saw
it's
was
either
the
Tommy
Tommy
or
just
Alex.
has that voice. I literally was like walking up the stairs, and I just hear "gentlemen," and I look up, and it's Tommy K. I was like, "What are you doing?"
I actually saw Tommy there the other night too.
That's right. That was
a
nice.
while, and I was like, "Oh, how's the Freestyle Love Supreme documentary?" They just
oh
came
my
out.
gosh, I heard about that. Was it
know,
Sundance that they premiered?
Yeah,
it
they premiered it.
I heard it
was like, "You're gonna like it."
I heard it was really insane. Like I hear it's a really good documentary. I can't wait to see it.
I love the trailer.
Yeah.
What's it saying? Oh yeah. Oh, going way back.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've gone on
so many sidebars.
So many tangents.
So many sidebars. I'm sorry.
No, you know what? This is the way conversation works. Like,
Yes.
when was the last time you had lunch with somebody where you like tied up every loose end?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. You go home and you're like, oh wait, we were talking.
Yeah, we were going to say
I'll
that.
tell
Oh,
her
right.
later.
Wait, what did Joe Biden think? Like,
Oh yeah, there we go.
Did you watch him watching the show?
Well, I was in front of us.
right.
I did. No, I couldn't. I was just there, and I was like, did a double take, looking behind me, like, I think that's. No, I think that's, and I was with my girlfriend, and it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I was Joe Biden. That's awesome.
Wow.
But sitting there, and then, again, the only thing anybody ever knew was my shot, because that's all they did on the talk shows and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, it was out there so much. I was like, what? Okay, I'm tired of this thing. I don't know what this shot is you're talking about. I don't know what shot are you. I don't know anything about this Alexander Hamill something.
Yeah.
But in either case, I'm sitting there and I'm like feeling this music and like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I didn't even understand how to feel. I think my mouth was agape the whole show, at least the whole first act. Because I'm hearing all these mixing sounds, and I'm like seeing the Schuyler sisters, and it's like Destiny Child, like like
the mix
thing going on. I'm like,
sticks
what?
in my head so much.
The mix as well. My dad is a DJ, so like I grew up with turntables in the house and like records and stuff like that. So I'm like hearing this scratching stuff. I'm like, what? How do you know this? How do you know about this stuff? Because I feel like there's been people who have tried to bring this hip hop to Broadway.
To the Broadway, yeah.
And it's not really made it so much, and so like I wasn't expecting much from the show, and I'm sitting there like, damn.
I feel like a lot of people felt that way.
Yeah,
that like
absolutely.
we heard, especially when it was like Daniel Watts, who's currently playing Ike in Tina right now.
Yeah.
When I first met him back in I think 2014. He was telling me literally, he was like, so it's a hip hop show about Alexander Hamilton. I was like, please miss me with that.
You know what I'm
saying?
saying? Like, that's the first
take
reaction.
that out of, like everyone's
You
reaction
lost me at
literally
hip-hop
is
show.
that. Because it's
You
like,
know what
first
I
of
mean?
all, a hip hop show on Broadway. Great. Thanks.
All right,
no, thank you. And also about who?
Right.
Please. But like, and that's the genius of it, because it's authentic, and it's like, it's rooted, like it's grounded, and you really feel, especially in my shot. Like, I mean, whenever Ian like tells us like, well, whenever he wants to give us notes on certain lines, he'll give us like what the original version of that line was that got cut and eventually like rewritten.
Ooh, so you know sort of like the intention.
Yeah, and so like one of them is like, when are these colonies gonna rise up? Used to be, all this shit make my people wanna rise up. All this shit, which is a Busta Rhymes song, exactly. And so like the idea, like when you think of it in that sense, and you think of all the old references that used to be in the show that had to get cut or had to get rewritten, like it's so authentically hip hop.
Or like, Grandmaster Flash was at the show the other day.
Okay. Oh God, it's so upsetting we didn't get to meet him. No, we didn't get to meet him.
I didn't meet him.
No, we didn't get to meet him. He left. He left. He had to leave early for something. He had like an emergency, I think.
Yeah. But like with his line in the show by Jefferson. Like, such a blunder sometimes.
Why he even brings the thunder.
Even brings the thunder, right? But he said something different though. Yeah.
James was like, he saw him in the audience and he just went.
He did?
He just like pointed at James and like smiled.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But like, yeah. And it was one of those moments when like, when we found out that he was in the audience, all of us just had this moment of like, whoa, it's like happening. Literally one of the godfathers of hip hop. Like, is gonna watch this show.
And you were like, I'm not phoning it in tonight.
Yeah, no, we were like.
And I want to just be clear, these guys never phone it in. Like, I don't want people who are coming into the show to think they're gonna get somehow.
Tonight they might mark.
No, it never happened.
I don't think we could if we wanted to.
I know. I was telling my sister that the other day. She was like, "What's the best day to come see you?" And I'm like, honestly. She was like, "You're probably tired on Wednesdays." I'm like, "Yeah, we're tired, but honestly, you would never know."
We're tired every day.
No,
you would never know. We're tired every day.
No, you're professionals. Like
you can't mark right hand man and come out there and just be like,
yeah.
How about one last time? Do you just like
one love? Whatever.
Well, that's the crazy, and like we're
gonna like, peace. I'm just going to get my fig tree. Bye.
But it's so true, and the vigor with which you perform it, like there's no way that you could mark it, and like 8 times a week. With precision, clarity, and like also you just sound damn good. Like there truly is no way to mark the show, even if you like. Tommy, you can hit me next time if you hear this, but like
Tommy,
there were me, Kyle, and Elijah on tour. Like Sunday morning, sometimes we'd be like, you know what, man. Let's like phone it in, like whatever. Let's just. We're so tired. We're like, whatever. Who cares? And then by the end of it, we're like, we're like at the end of my shot, my chest hurts because like there's no way. There's truly no way because like we said, the music is rooted in a way that like even if you wanted to phone it in, it gets into your bloodstream and your skin and like. You inhabit it and it takes over you. That's like the powerful like addictiveness of this music.
It's like it almost hurts you if you did try and mark it.
Yes,
I try to
actually,
do that. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
exactly what it is.
I try to mark some vocal things sometimes, and I'm like, now my throat's closed, and I'm singing with a closed throat because I'm trying to like. But I'm like, if you just do it tomorrow,
the way it's supposed to be done,
it'll be fine. Like,
and that's always the note we get. That's always the note we get. If you do it the way it's supposed to be done, you will be fine.
Right. Oh my gosh, you guys are so fun. I feel like this is exactly why I wanted to, like, why I got back into the radio business. I was a radio personality for like 15 years.
Oh, word.
And then I went into some behind the scenes stuff in radio, and I created this. I don't know how much you know about like my history with social media, but while I was working at Sirius XM Radio, I just like on a whim created this anonymous Twitter account called BroadwayGirl, who just was sort of an aspirational character based on me that was like, for everyone who thought, man, if I was in New York, I'd go to a show every day, and I wouldn't care if I sat in the last row, and I would never complain about seeing an understudy because I'd be there, and so it became this release, this very like focused, passionate joy machine, and I got back into radio because I wanted people to be able to get to know their favorite performers and sit in while they're just talking about their own joys. And to have you guys here together is so fantastic because, otherwise I could have a great conversation with either one of you, but to hear you guys learn from each other in real time and share your experiences of your different companies coming together on Broadway, it's just, it makes me want to like rethink my model and always have 2 people in here, so I can do more of like be more of like a moderator. And
it always gives the actors a chance because like we're so tired. So it's like I love you, Tamar, even though I've only known you for like 2 weeks. I love you. I'm not gonna be like, yo, let's get lunch before the show. Or we want all of the time that we have before and after the show to rest up so that we can do that show. And the only times we see each other during the show is to say really dumb foolishness to each other before we go on stage.
And you also have a couple moments together on stage, which I hadn't noticed until I came back specifically to watch the two of you. In fact, you stop and you actually talk quietly to each other just in passing during the Winter's Ball, don't you? Like, don't you guys walk across the stage together?
No, that's Burr. That's you and Burr. But we have a moment together after the cabinet battle. Yo, what's going on, Laura?
I think I've just seen it so many times.
Yeah.
All the roles are the same.
She keeps saying like handful. What'd you tell me? 22? 21?
All right, you're getting back at me now for bringing up your age.
Yo, she said, I've only seen it like 22 times. I said, excuse me? I'm in the show and I think I've seen it 8. Like, what do you mean?
Well, but you were like, you've seen it 22 times on Broadway alone, and I at least got
that's right. I did think it was Broadway.
No. That also counts opening night in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
As if that was going to
Which
take
is fair.
it back
And I was like,
bit.
oh.
Also, I would just like to say that I have been there for legitimate work reasons.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Or spent like paid full price for tickets.
Yeah.
Because don't you think it would be a disservice for me to sit down and talk to you guys for an hour without having seen you in the part?
Oh, yeah.
And if you look at how many cast members I've interviewed
that's
over
real.
the years, like
you just want to make sure you know your shit.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
For sure.
So.
No.
So call me out all you want, little boy.
But no, we have a moment after the cabinet battles where we're saying foolishness to each other as we walk off stage. Also, what didn't get mentioned when we put up the tour, there's just so many things in the show that like sometimes things just get lost in translation. But when we got to Broadway and they gave us that note in Yorktown that we can salute you during the like ending of the song, when I was like, excuse me, they're like, yeah. They were like, they were like, James usually salutes Washington if you want to do that with him. And I like almost started tearing up because I was like, that is so cool. Yeah. And that's one of my favorite moments in the show. I really love all of it. And we have a lot of little moments where we make eye contact during the show that like, I just feel like before I just never would have thought to do that. And that, and again, that's just one of the really fun things about going from one company to another and like having these new things put into the show so that it makes so that, you know, we'll have new things to look forward to around show 300, 400 to be complacent about.
Do you ever have somebody who's put in who like is brand new who you haven't had a chance to rehearse with? Like, would you ever just go, like, be in that moment, be like, hey, dude, welcome to the company. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, if they haven't had a proper put-in because of the way, like, you know, emergencies work out or the way that shows have to happen sometimes, like, it's very much attempted for that to not happen. I think the biggest goal is to make sure that everybody feels 100% safe. But, like, in every situation, we've had emergency situations where it's like, hey, this person's never done the put-in. Low-key never ran through the show, but we need somebody to play Lawrence Phillip today. So, like, let's do it. Or, you know, when I was on tour, we had many a time Tamar, who was in the Chicago company, flew in to do Laf Jeff for a weekend. It was our company that he came to do that for. He came in for a weekend while we were in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to play Laf Jeff for, like, 4 performances. And literally came in, and we had a mini rehearsal where he ran the cheer lift in my shot and one of the moments in What I Miss. And then we did the show together that night. And that was it. And
this kind of thing happens. I mean, like Michael Awoye was training for both Hamilton and Burr, and he hadn't done Act 2 the first time he went on as Hamilton.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was like 6 days before he was scheduled to make his debut. And then they were like, can you do it? And of course, being Michael, he was like, of course.
And that's the great thing about the company is that, like, I have truly never met one person that's gone on that I've been like, we'll see. But, like, you know, they always come through and they always, like, kill it. And there's always, like, you know, and there's always huge amounts of support from the company to make sure that everybody does it right.
Well, you guys have done it. You guys, the whole Hamilton family has done a really good job of creating the loyalty back from, like, if genuine loyalty to the company, I think, creates genuine loyalty from the company back to the production. And I think I can imagine so many people who would come back for a weekend to do, you know, in an emergency. The company of Waitress in London, like, didn't have enough covers and everyone got sick. And they flew somebody out from the American company to go make her West End debut because, like, they just didn't have enough people. And I feel like one of those nights that, like when Lynn is there,
Mm-hmm.
so there's
Yeah.
going to be some strange confluence events, and he's going to have to go on, you know? and that audience is going to.
Some like massive emergency, and it's
Right.
like, Lynn, we're
That's-
so sorry.
You're the only one who can do it.
You have to stop writing with Alan Menken and come do. You have to come do
sorry.
Hamilton real quick.
You know, we're almost out of time. It's
What?
been so yeah.
Word?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's been
wow.
54
This always
minutes.
happens.
So
Yeah.
what I want to say most importantly before we go is that you can get tickets to Hamilton now.
Yeah, that's a
very good to
possibility.
I
say.
think that there
Yeah.
are so many people who tried for the first couple of years, and it was just impossible that they've stopped checking.
I'm so
Yeah.
And
glad
if you
that-
just
yeah.
go
Yeah,
to the
thanks for
Hamilton
saying that.
official website, like you can get tickets.
Mm-hmm.
So don't worry about it breaking the bank, and don't worry about going to secondary ticket brokers or anything.
Yeah, and worrying
go
about
through
whether
the
or not they're real.
official- Go through the official site because it's sold out every night.
It's sold out every night, but there's always like resells on Ticketmaster, and there's always resells on the website.
Well, and
like,
they're just, if you're looking a couple of months in advance, if you're planning a trip to New York or go see it on tour. Also, the Hamilton app is a great resource and a lot
Yeah,
of fun. So I recommend that.
Also, talk to the box office. And I think that's like just the whole thing with New York theater in general is like, don't be afraid to like go wait in line for a hot minute and then go speak to the box office, because
That's the ultimate.
almost
way of doing
every
it.
box office like person I've spoken to is a very kind human who is like, I want to make sure you see a good show tonight. And so like, let's see if I can help you. And I've like gotten some great deals on some show, like Dear Evan Hansen
Absolutely.
saw front row for I think $140 during Ben Platt's last week.
Really?
Because yeah, exactly. Because I went up to the box office and I was just like, hey, I want to make sure I see Ben before I leave. Like, I'm an actor, I blah, blah. And they were just like, oh, yeah, well, let's see what we got. Oh, how about this? I can, and you know, they were just being a kind human. And like, listen, I can't speak for all of humanity. Some people suck.
course.
But I guarantee you,
That's damn right.
I guarantee you that if you just like, you know, put in a little effort, you'll make it work.
It's been such an honor to have you guys here. I love you. You're
I
gonna have
love
to
you.
like hold me back from coming to see every single performance. I'm gonna report on whether you're marking too.
Hey, Tommy, what's good? So just, you remember that time Fergie was like, he can't mark? Lies. Let me let you know. This man spoke his Yorktown rap.
Let me know if there's ever anything that I can do for you guys, and I hope you'll come back sometime soon.
We definitely
Love
will.
to.
You're
Yes.
the best.